Welcome to this edition of News Today, a series where we briefly discuss and analyze important news of the day. Without delay, let's explore the headlines first. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation released Household Consumption Expenditure Survey 2022-23. About 36% Rajya Sabha candidates declared criminal cases against themselves, says ADR. Prime Minister launched initiatives for cooperative sector. The Union Ministry of Home Affairs MHA released a booklet titled Decisive Battle with Left Extremism. United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF released a report titled Role of Social Media in Facilitating Online Child Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. UAE has been dropped from Financial Action Task Force's Financial Crime Watch List. In the very first news, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation released Household Consumption Expenditure Survey HCES 2022-23. HCES is designed to collect information on consumption of goods and services by household. It is conducted by National Sample Survey Office NSSO every 5 years. Let's address the utility of HCES. It collects information on demographic particulars of household which are useful for understanding consumption and expenditure pattern, standard of living, and well-being of households. HCES data plays a key role in reviewing critical economic indicators, including GDP, poverty levels, and consumer price inflation. Here are some key findings of HCES. Rural and urban average monthly consumption spending per person increased to Rs 3,773 and Rs 6,459 per month, more than doubled since 2011 and 12. Monthly per capita consumer expenditure is highest in Sikkim for both rural and urban areas and lowest in Chhattisgarh. Share of expenditure on food in rural India was 46% and in urban India was 39%. Before moving on, let us also learn a little about National Sample Survey Office NSSO. Headed by Director General, it is responsible for conduct of large-scale sample surveys in diverse fields on all India basis. Also, it is responsible for nationwide household surveys on socio-economic subjects including unemployment, annual survey of industries, and more. National Statistics Office NSO consists of Central Statistics Office, CSO, and NSSO. CSO is an attached office and NSSO is a subordinate office under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation.
Moving on to the next news. About 36% Rajya Sabha candidates declared criminal cases against themselves, says ADR. Association for Democratic Reforms, or ADR, published a report based on analysis of criminal background, financial, education and other details of candidates contesting Rajya Sabha polls later this month. Let's now discuss and understand about criminalization of politics. Criminalization of politics includes direct entry of criminals into political parties and legislature through elections and use of criminal methods and tactics to influence political processes and procedures. If we talk about current status of criminalization of politics in India, as per ADR report September 2023, then 40% sitting MPs have declared criminal cases against themselves. And 25% sitting MPs have declared serious criminal cases such as murder, crimes against women and against themselves. Further, if we have a look at the reasons for criminalization of politics, then these include lack of inner party democracy among political parties, nexus between criminals and political parties, and narrow self-interest of people based on identities like caste and religion. Criminalization of politics also poses some serious impacts, undermining democracy and electoral processes, weaken governance and rule of law by making lawbreakers into lawmakers and negative role models for youth. Now let's have a look at some measures taken against criminalization of politics. Legislative reforms like Section 8, Clause 3 of Representation of People Act 1951 disqualifies legislators convicted for a sentence of at least 2 years for a period of 6 years since his release. And in terms of judicial pronouncements, the Supreme Court ordered mandatory publication of criminal records of candidates by political parties as ruled in Public Interest Foundation case 2018. At last, now let's discuss the important recommendations regarding criminalization of politics. These recommendations include disqualification on framing of charge for certain offences as per Law Commission's 244th report, state funding of elections to reduce cost of elections, and entry of black money in politics as suggested by Dinesh Goswami Committee 1990 and Indrajit Gupta Committee 1998. And institutionalization and legislation for political parties to ensure inner-party democracy.
In another news, Prime Minister launched initiatives for cooperative sector. Before discussing the initiatives, let us know more about the Cooperative Society. It is a voluntary association of individuals having common needs who join hands for achievement of common economic interests. Among 300 largest cooperative societies of world, 3 societies of India, namely Amul, Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative Limited IFCO, and Krishak Bharti Cooperative Limited are included. Now, let's discuss the key initiatives in detail. The government launched pilot project for world's largest grain storage plant in cooperative sector. It will span to 11 primary agricultural credit societies (PACs) in 11 states. The project aims to integrate PACs go-downs into food grain supply chain, enhancing food security and economic development. It is supported by National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development (NABARD) and led by National Cooperative Development Corporation. It is implemented through convergence of existing schemes like Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, Agriculture Marketing Infrastructure, and more to enable PACs participation in project to avail subsidies and interest subvention benefits for infrastructure development. Another key initiative was the expansion of PACs. Additional 500 PACs across country will facilitate construction of go-downs and other agricultural infrastructure. Also, computerization of 18,000 PACs to modernize farming and empower small and marginal farmers. Moving on, let's also see what does primary agricultural credit societies mean. These are village-level cooperative credit societies that serve as last link in 3-tiered cooperative credit structure headed by state cooperative banks. They provide short-term and medium-term agricultural loans to farmers. Lastly, let's take a look at the steps taken to promote cooperative societies. Separate Ministry of Cooperation, Sehkar Se Samriddhi Scheme, 97th Amendment Act 2011 that granted constitutional status to cooperative societies. It inserted Part 9b, the Cooperative Societies, Article 43b in Part 4 as directive principles of state policy for promotion of cooperative societies.
In another news, the Union Ministry of Home Affairs released a booklet titled Decisive Battle with Left Extremism. The booklet assesses the current status of left-wing extremism in India and the multi-pronged strategy adopted by the Union government for peace, stability, and development in left-wing extremism-affected areas. Left-wing extremism or Naxal insurgency in India originated in a 1967 uprising in Naxalbari, West Bengal by the Communist Party of India Marxist. Here are some details on the current status of left extremism. The number of left extremism affected districts reduced to 45 in 2022 compared to 96 in 2010. Incidents of violence reduced by 76% between 2010 and 2022. Most affected districts, that are districts contributing approximately 90% of left extremism violence, came down to 25 in 2021. Let's take a look at the reasons for the persistence of left extremism. The socio-economic reasons are land alienation, social exclusion based on castes, and suboptimal access to basic amenities like education and healthcare. Also, the left-wing extremism strategies of exploitation of local grievances and deep roots in local communities further added to the cause. And the issues in governance like ineffective implementation of the Forest Rights Act and PISA Act, state high-handedness as reflected in policies like Salwa Judum. Moving on, here are some initiatives to counter left extremism. First and foremost, the National Policy and Action Plan to address left extremism was approved in 2015. This led to the development of the operational strategy Samadhan, which included smart leadership, aggressive strategy, motivation, and training. Second, the security measures like security-related expenditure scheme for construction of fortified police stations, and redeployment of CRPF battalions. It also included offensive strategies such as joint operations to entangle Naxals, financial choking, and the establishment of separate verticals within the National Investigation Agency, Government of India for investigation. Lastly, development initiatives like Civic Action Program, road connectivity project, Eklavya model residential schools, aspirational district program, and more.
In another news, United Nations Children's Fund (UNICEF) released a report titled "Role of Social Media in Facilitating Online Child Sexual Exploitation and Abuse." Online child sexual exploitation and abuse involve the use of information and communication technology as a means to sexually abuse or sexually exploit children. As per National Human Rights Commission, child sexual abuse material (CSAM) has increased by 250 to 300% on social media in India. Let's see how social media facilitates online child sexual exploitation and abuse. First, social media platform could be used by predators to entice and coerce children into posting graphic content. And also, children may purposefully or unintentionally gain access to sexually explicit material easily accessible on social networking sites. Let us discuss the impact of sexual abuse material on children. It leads to impaired brain development and psychological stress like anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and more. It has the potential to normalize or desensitize children to inappropriate behavior. It also leads to communicable and non-communicable diseases like sexually transmitted infections including HIV, cardiovascular disease, and unintended pregnancies. Here are some recommendations made in the report. It recommends to make it mandatory for online platforms to have clear, accessible, child-friendly mechanisms for children to report concerns, and that social media platforms and service providers should publish periodic transparency reports. Moving on, take a look at the steps taken to curb online child sexual exploitation and abuse. Information Technology IT Act 2000. Sections 66E, 67, 67A, and 67B of IT Act impose stringent penalties and fines for online transmission of obscene or pornographic content including child sexual abuse material or CSAM. IT Rules 2021 curb circulation of CSAM on social media platforms. Online Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation Prevention Investigation Unit has been set up by CBI. YouTube uses an automatic tool called Child Sexual Abuse Imagery Match to weed out CSAM.
Moving ahead, UAE has been dropped from Financial Action Task Force's Financial Crime Watch List. At the recently held Financial Action Task Force or FATF plenary meeting, UAE was confirmed to have been dropped from its jurisdictions under Increased Monitoring or Grey List. Additionally, Gibraltar, Barbados and Uganda have also been removed from FATF's Grey List, whereas Kenya and Namibia have been added to the Grey List. Before proceeding, let's start by first discussing about Financial Action Task Force. It was established in 1989 by G7 countries to combat money laundering. In 2001, its mandate was expanded to also combat terrorist financing. Since 2019, FATF has had an open-ended mandate after originally operating under fixed terms. It has 39 member countries, including India, which admitted in 2010 as the 34th member. Now let's understand about FATF's black and grey lists. FATF publicly lists countries with weak measures to combat money laundering and terrorist financing regimes in two documents. First is the high-risk jurisdictions subject to a call for action, that is blacklist. It comprises jurisdictions with serious strategic deficiencies to counter money laundering, terrorist financing and proliferation financing. Next is grey list, which consists of jurisdictions with strategic deficiencies in their regimes to counter money laundering, terrorist financing and proliferation financing. Currently, there are only 3 countries which are Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Iran and Myanmar in FATF blacklist. At last now let's have a look at the significance of UAE's removal from grey list for India. It will give a boost to investment in Indian non-banking financial companies or NBFCs. A 2021 circular from RBI stated that investments in NBFCs from FATF non-compliant jurisdictions shall not be treated at par with that from the compliant jurisdictions. Also, there will be reduced compliance cost and cost of funding for financial institutions and individuals operating in UAE. The place in news for today is Ukraine with its capital Kyiv. It is in the news as Russia claims capture of Avdiivka city after Ukraine withdraws from the key city. Talking about its political boundaries, then it is situated in the eastern part of the European continent. It is bordered by Belarus in the north, Russia in the east, Moldova and Romania in the southwest, and Hungary, Slovakia and Poland in the west. The two water bodies of the Ukraine are Sea of Azov and the Black Sea in the south. Also, in far southeast, Ukraine is separated from Russia by Kerch Strait. Talking about its geographical features, its major rivers are Dnieper, Dniester and Danube. Its highest point is Mount Hoverella and it has mostly temperate climate type.
As we conclude today's main news, let's take a look at some quick updates. Reserve Bank of India has allowed banks and non-banks to issue prepaid payment instruments or PPIs for public transit services. PPIs will contain automated fare collection application related to toll collection, parking and more. These are payment instruments that facilitate purchase of goods and services against the value stored on such instruments. Prime Minister has inaugurated Sudarshan Setu in Gulf of Kutch. It is India's longest cable-stayed bridge with solar panels installed on upper portions of the footpath, generating 1 megawatt of electricity. It is a 4-lane bridge that connects Okha mainland and Bet Dwarka Island in Gujarat. G33 calls for progress on agricultural trade ahead of 13th WTO Ministerial Conference. G33 comprises of 47 countries and is also called Friends of Special Product in Agriculture. It is a coalition of developing nations advocating for flexibility to undertake limited market opening in agriculture. India has opposed China-led Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement or IFTA proposal at the WTO. IFTA was first mooted in 2017. It aims to improve investment climate and promote international cooperation to facilitate flow of FDI between WTO members. Armenia has withdrawn its participation from Russia-led security bloc Collective Security Treaty Organization or CSTO. It originated from a treaty signed in 1992 in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Subsequently, Azerbaijan, Georgia and Belarus joined it and the treaty came into force in 1994. Fifth edition of joint military exercise Dharmagarjan between the Indian Army and the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force commenced in Rajasthan. It is an annual exercise and conducted alternatively in India and Japan. Full moon on February 24 is called as hunger moon or snow moon or storm moon. February's full moon will miss Earth's shadow because moon's orbit is tilted by 5 degrees to the plane of the Earth's orbit and therefore Earth won't be directly between the sun and the moon. New research has developed a modern analog for pollen and non-pollen palinomorphs of Kaziranga National Park that can help in interpretation of past vegetation and climate. Palinomorphs are microscopic structures abundant in most sediments and sedimentary rocks and are resistant to routine pollen extraction procedures. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to the test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answers to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the links in the description below.